Hey everybody, welcome to Landscape Rescue. Today I'm at the Walmart Garden Center here in Springfield, Missouri. There's like 900 super centers here. This is the one on Glenstone and Battlefield? Glenstone and James River? I don't know, it's by the Hooters. I did a quick walkthrough to see if there's anything that I wanted to talk about, and I'm seeing some plants I think you guys are gonna be interested in. Right out of the gate, I walk around the corner. The first thing I saw in my preemptive walkthrough was this. This is Vitex, or chased tree. I think Texas is probably the end of this guy as far as heat zone goes. I've seen them a lot in like the San Antonio Zoo. They have a lot of Vitex. And if you can see that foliage, star-shaped foliage, very, very pretty, gets mistaken quite frequently for people that aren't plant people for Jamaican lettuce. I don't know how to say it, not get yelled at by YouTube, but hippie lettuce, I don't know how to say it, but it does get mistaken for that periodically, especially when it's pushing buds. So this is the chased tree. I do like this plant, and this doesn't have any blooms on it, but I will show you some pictures of blooms. Very, very pretty. It's a big boy though, so I want you to be aware of that. Now this variety is called Delta Blues, and it's gonna get 8x8, 10x10, so somewhere around there. Now, our Zone 6 winters have a tendency to knock these back a little bit, but I've never lost one. And I'm talking about in a nursery setting, not a nursery setting, in a garden center setting where plants go to die, where you think that we would be able to take care of the numerous semis of plant material that show up. These did real well. And a lot of the times, that's kind of my catalyst for if I think something's a tough plant or not, is if it can survive in the deathscape that is a garden center. These seem to do very well. I was a big fan of these. So this is Delta Blues chased tree. Now another plant that piqued my interest, because you guys know I'm a rose fan and I do like no fuss roses. Any shrub rose for me is typically zero fuss. This is called Lottie's Love, and this is it's in a first editions pot. Now this says that it gets 3x3 or 3x5. So depending on how you're trimming this is gonna depend on how wide it gets. But it has these beautiful purple flowers. I'm not seeing any that are blooming right now, but I did like how this looked, and we'll get some pictures up for you guys so you can see it in the landscape. A little wispy. Reminds me a lot of like that Floribunda style where you have a lot of foliage and then you have, you know, small flowers kind of poking in throughout the whole year, which really makes a really pretty backdrop. This one is very heavily budded, very heavily budded. I think it would be a good addition. Now, these are $25, they're $24.94, and they're a little on the small side, I would say. So it doesn't make it a huge value for me because they are really little in this 2-gallon pot, versus if I was looking at like some of these Spyhea, right? We talked about this on the Wednesday episode, I believe, this Spyhea, Superstar Spyhea, I think that was a first edition. So they just got a first edition truck in, and there's a bunch of stuff out there. It's really hard to see, but there's a bunch of new, this current year's growth squirting up through the center. So this one's ready to go. It's ready to rock. In case we haven't talked about this one, 2 to 3 feet tall, 3 to 4 feet wide. And this one was called the Superstar Spyhea, which I think we did talk about that. I talk about a lot of plants ad nauseum, apparently. Okay, here's something cool. Crepe Myrtles. And I just want to do a quick little crepe myrtle tutorial. Crepe myrtles in my zone, in Zone 6, are a perennial, but a lot of times they will die down to the ground and you just trim them off at the ground and then they grow up. They bloom on new growth. So it's not necessarily a detriment. What I've noticed is that people that are not diligent about trimming their crepe myrtles in my area, in the Springfield, Missouri metro area, just being diligent and trimming out the dead every year. What I've done is just cut them down at the ground. We used to do that 20 years ago when we were running around cleaning up people's landscapes for the spring, doing the spring cleaning in landscapes, you know, getting the leaves out, you know, doing all remulching, that sort of thing. We'd always cut the crepe myrtles down to nothing. And then we'd let them reflush. Well, they bloom on new growth, right? So then they pop their blooms in the summertime. And they never really got out of control. But now that I'm seeing, we had a couple winters that were pretty mild, not to mention the fact everybody and their uncle sells crepe myrtles. So you didn't have landscapers planting crepe myrtles as much as you had just homeowners going to Home Depot, Lowe's, Walmart, picking up a crepe myrtle and not really knowing how to take care of it. This is the Black Diamond series. And this one is called Crystalline, but check that out. Burgundy colored foliage with white blooms. Yeah, really stands out, really adds a lot of dynamics. And that's very typical of that Black Diamond series. So black, dark purple foliage, and then the corresponding bloom. We sell a lot of these. These have been very popular for the past 10 years, at least in the nurseries that I've worked at, because of that extra season that you get, right? Because we gotta wait a little while before these start pushing buds. We gotta wait a little while for blooms. If you wanted to compare it to a purple sand cherry with that, I almost would say if you didn't need the spring color that the flowers from the purple sand cherry add to the space, then you would go with one of these because this would be really pretty. But of course you could add that purple foliage with a Weigela or something like that. But I like this series. I like this series. 12 by 8. But like I said, in my zone, we're not going to get 12 by 8. And I would say even in a zone 5, which is where it's considered an annual, because I think in general, you could say that crepe myrtles are a zone 7. It would be a deciduous shrub at that point. It would just lose its leaves and you'd be fine at zone 7. I think even in a zone 5, if you mulched heavy, trimmed it down to the ground, mulched heavy, you could probably get it to act like it does in zone 6. So that's the Black Diamond. Now again, here's another Black Diamond Crimson Crown. Now this is going to have that typical Black Diamond color, but it's also going to have a red bloom. Red, a little darker, right? When it comes to refracted light, red is going to be not going to show up as far away as maybe that crystalline will. Still very pretty and a great tertiary opposite for yellow. I'm not a huge fan of combining reds and yellows flower-wise. Yellow being closer to white on the scale. On the color wheel, maybe you could get away with it. It just kind of reminds me of McDonald's, so I don't do it very often. This is the Black Diamond Crimson Crown. Very pretty. I am a huge fan of this Black Diamond series and even contemplated doing an entire crepe myrtle area, but it is for me, in my zone, it is a lot of work. Mature size, 12 by 8. There is smaller crepe myrtles out there. Victor is kind of an oldie but a goodie, and it's about a 5 to 6 footer. And then you have Pocomoks, of course, about 3 foot. So you could do a nice stair step. I like to incorporate other things with my crepe myrtles, other summer blooming, like hardy hibiscus, panicle hydrangeas, that sort of thing. Yeah, look them up. We've already talked about one, kind of brushed over one Spyhea, but in, I think, Monday's episode, we talked about the Gold Mound Spyhea, where I had mentioned these yellow leafed Spyheas. A little smaller, right? So they don't get as big, but look at that impact. This one is 36 by 36, 36 by 24. So just think 3 by 2. I think the secret to Spyhea for me is periodically knocking them back, maybe once, maybe twice a year, just to get them to push new growth. I really think that as old school as Spyhea are, sometimes we forget about how good of a plant this is to bring in that yellow color. I do like Spyhea a lot. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna go grab one of those Black Diamond crepe myrtles and I'm gonna pop it in here with this so you can see how much they play off of each other. So give me a second.
Yeah. Thug life landscaping, we roll through the dirt. Hostas in the back while I flex in my shirt. Hydrate your panic you later, pedals so fly. Knock out roses, punching colors at your eye. We got spades, got hoes, riding deep on them trucks. Flipping landscapes, yo man, it ain't just luck. From day lilies popping to the soil we enrich. We the kings of the garden, making nature our pitch. Yo, soil held strong like a gym rat's flex. Breaking ground smoother than a Rolex. 2-year fur tabs, keep your blooms on the grind. A thug with green thumbs, man, we redefine. Roses knocking fools out like a Friday night fight. Plant game heavy, making properties tight. Thug life landscaping, the crew's in control, turning barren.
Okay, so I just put together just kind of a quick display, maybe how I would represent these if I was working here. But you can see the combo there. Check that out. Check out how much these pop. So if I even went in and made myself a little bit more room, this table has a giant hole in the center. I don't know why they thought that was something we needed, but it does. It has a giant gaping hole in the center. So you can see there what these look like. That bright yellow color, that dark purple color from the Crepe Myrtles, how pretty that looks. Here's some 9 bark over here. This is Diablo 9 bark. Diablo 9 bark is a big boy. It's like the Wu-Tang Clan. You don't mess with Diablo 9 bark. I like to trim Diablo as many times as I can throughout the year just to keep it nice and dense. They do have a tendency to want to get big. They're usually happy in every situation, but you can see here, even that Diablo up against this. So obviously the Diablo would be in the back if you were tiering something like that. 9 bark's pretty. There is smaller 9 bark out there, like Little Devil is a really popular one. Diablo's an old school variety. I don't believe it's got a plant agreement on it anymore, so anybody can pretty much grow it. Case in point, it's in a black pot. This says 5 to 6 feet tall, 4 to 5 feet wide. I think they get a little bigger than that with a hardiness zone of 3. So like I said, you can grow them in a lot of different places. Gold-bound Spyhea with one of these Fraser Photinia, and we saw those at Nixa Hardware. Look at that combo there. How pretty that is. Look at that. Different leaf texture, kind of a glossier leaf versus a more matte leaf on the Spyhea, but that Spyhea's yellow color lends itself very well to being put in almost any situation, because remember what we said, we can find purples in a lot of different spaces in garden centers. I made a mention in, I think, the Monday's video about me finding some dappled willows at Walmart, and I found these 2-gallon dappled willows, and this Walmart has these at $15 versus 24 something at Lowe's. So Walmart is really stepping up its game. I think Walmart is a little bit better about getting stuff out of there because they close their garden center down middle of July, end of July. They do a good job price-wise. They price stuff to move. I really like that. One more thing outside, this variegated Weigela. I thought that was neat. I think for something inexpensive to pop into a space for 15 bucks, right? This is a little 2-gallon variegated Weigela. I've said this before. I don't know if some of the newcomers have heard me say this before. I really like trimming Weigela quite frequently. I trim it a lot because it has a tendency to get leggy on me. So if you want it dense, it might be somewhat of a tall order with Weigela. Now this one here, if I remember right, doesn't stay small. It's not a little guy. Hardy to zone 5. I mean 4x4. That's still, I wouldn't consider that little, but manageable, a little bit more manageable. Trim them. Don't be afraid to trim them. A lot of times they'll push blooms if you do it. Now with something like a variegated Weigela, pushing blooms isn't necessarily that big of a deal because you have, I mean, blooms are important. Obviously they're very pretty, but you have that variegated foliage to kind of play off of things there. I am not a dahlia connoisseur, but I see these little dahlias. I feel like it's love at first sight. I'm gonna buy a flat of these. They're $8 a piece. I haven't spent very much money on plants at all this year, and I feel like I deserve, for all my hard work, to get some dahlias. So that's what I'm gonna do. I know this might be a little outside of my norm. I feel like this dahlia and I should maybe get a place together. And if it gets 18 by 18, I've got a perfect spot for it. Look at these beautiful flowers. I am excited. I don't know why I'm gushing over these so much. I'm absolutely in love with them. Not a very long video, but I appreciate you sticking around till the end. That helps me out a ton. Thank you very much. I'm gonna go home and take these dahlias for a spin, see where I'm planning on putting them. I got an idea. Up in the front. I'm really concentrating on that front bed now to just really get it to pop and blow my mind, because that's really what it's about. I know they're an annual. Yeah, I'm excited. Let me see if I can take them for a spin. My name's Stuart Moore. This is Landscape Rescue, and thank you very much for letting me into your home talk about plants.